Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Let me get my TikTok live up here. Live. And we're going to go with mysticism. Sorry, I realize this is this is not that exciting watching me start up my TikTok. Normally I get this going first. I'm a little discombobulated this morning. It's okay. It's all right. I forgive myself as you should forgive yourself too from time to time. Good morning, everyone. Notifying viewers that I'm live. Hope I get a few people to join me. I did a live earlier in the week. I did a TikTok live during the eclipse, which was pretty cool. We had the eclipse this week. That was exciting. Let me pull the shade down behind me. I mean, it's not a light, not a light comes to it, but I don't need to be that backlit. Having a little backlighting is okay. Keep trying, keep going. We're letting more viewers know. Good morning, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Here this morning. Talking about mysticism this morning. What is it? Talking about connecting with the divine, talking about mystical practices for the modern world. Why? Why do we care about mysticism? We're not all going to go become monks. If you decide you want to, that's totally cool. Totally cool to be a monk or a mystic or whatever. I'm waving to people as they join on TikTok. It's the only place I could do that. But welcome this morning. Wow, TikTok is blowing up. This is apparently a good time and day to be on TikTok. But I'm going to talk about mysticism and why is it important? Why does it have a place still in today's world? In my opinion, it's all my opinion. Unless I have a guest on here, which I haven't done, but yeah, I would like to. I would like to have guests on here at some point. I'll only be able to do it sort of. I won't be able to do it on TikTok. You won't be able to. Right now, my streaming software doesn't work with TikTok, so I have TikTok up on my phone. I have this streaming through my laptop. High tech. We live in a high tech world. Um, so why do we? I need to go and talk about what mysticism is, and then I'm going to talk about why I think it has a place in today's world. I'm going to talk about some practices, some mystical practices. We can't go, in an hour. We can't. You could study mysticism for many lifetimes and not get to the entire depth of it. So let's talk about mysticism. What it is? What do I mean by the term mysticism? And so, of course, mysticism is I want to say it's a flavor of spirituality. It is not a religion. It's not a form of spirituality. It's not a denomination. It is not a rigid, predefined set of practices. It is a way that we describe certain types of spiritual practices, like we might describe animism as a set of spiritual beliefs, a set of common spiritual beliefs. And there are many animistic religions and systems out there. I come from an animistic background. I practice shamanism. I think shamanism, animism, mysticism all go hand in hand in hand. So I'll describe that a little bit. Um, so that being said, mysticism exists in many different religious and spiritual systems. There is mystical, that's where we get that word. And the word goes back to ancient Greece, where we had what they called the mystery schools. And I can't remember the name of them, but if you were an initiate into a mystery school, there was a word like mysterion or something like that. But there's mysticism in every spiritual system. There's mystical Christianity, there's mystical Buddhism, there's mystical Islam, there's mystical indigenous mystical components to indigenous religions. There are mystical Could you be a mystical agnostic or atheist? That would be an interesting thing to explore. Maybe we'll talk about that today. Obviously, it would just be my take on it. So, so mysticism isn't a religion, a specific religion, but it describes practices that may take place within a religion, or you could be a mystic with no proclaimed religion. Right. Mysticism is spiritual practice. So, mysticism is a set of spiritual practices that help one connect with and even identify with divinity, with the divine. So, what is the divine? The divine is God or gods or the universe or source or the Ein Sof or whatever name you want to put on it. I love um, the ineffable name of God, right? Ineffable, unpronounceable, unknowable. Whatever label we put on source, whatever label we put on the divine is a label. And so, sometimes I avoid the word God because it has a lot of, unfortunately, has gathered a lot of baggage, not from divinity itself, but from the stuff that humanity has put onto that term, right? And a lot of people, like, you're starting to sound like, too close to fundamentalism or what have you. So mysticism ultimately is about elevating the consciousness, and elevating itself like is a metaphorical term. We talk about raising consciousness or ascending or whatever. Good morning. We've got couple of, at least a couple of regular folks here, and hopefully some new folks as well, tuning in, talking about mysticism this morning. And I'm just defining my terms so that we can have a common ground over each other. So mysticism again is practices that bring our consciousness, whether you want we often think about elevation, things being higher or larger, as more important. We're tuning ourselves to the frequency of the divine. And I'll talk a little bit about surrender as well. So one of the ways I like to think about it is surrendering my body mind to the divine, which is that's a secret. That's a secret practice. Don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody I told you. I'll get kicked out of the fictitious mystical organization. I don't. I don't. I just kidding. There's no. I'm a little bit of a funny mood this morning. Um, so one secret to that is surrendering. Uh, there's a phrase that comes out of, I don't know where it comes out of exactly, but be not the doer. Be not the doer. Don't confuse yourself. Like taking on observer. So I'm giving away mystical secrets already. Um, take on the observer posture. Allow your body and mind to do what it does and be detached from that. As you do that, you hand the reins, like step aside a little bit with the intention's a real key here. I've said that in many, many of my other talks. Any sort of spiritual work you're doing, intention is the key, right? It's like people who just like go through the motions, right? You go to church and you cross yourself, and you don't have any thought about what it means or whatever. It's not really having an impact on you spiritually, you know, other than you're in the ceremony, and so you're going to pick up some good vibes from there. But intention, I'm all about personal transformation, personal revelation. My mouth didn't want to say that word this morning. Not the book of Revelation, personal revelation, revealing truths to yourself. I'm a big fan of what they call UPG, unverified personal gnosis, right? I think subjective experience is our truth. We live in subjective experience. So, um, One practice you can do is to intend to hand your body and mind over to divine and take an observer position. Let your body do what it's doing. Let your mind do what it's doing. You're essentially channeling the divine. I'm not saying that's easy. If we could all just, do that at the drop of the hat, it gets easier over time. Why? Why is that not easy? Why is it so hard for us just to say, all right, you know, what's the old song, Jesus Take the Wheel, right? That that's kind of what we're talking about. Take over, divinity, take over for me. Sometimes if I'm on one of these or I'm teaching or I'm working with a student or working with a client and something comes out of my mouth that is in any way profound, that's not me speaking. In fact, it's not, it's never me speaking, but at that point, it's really not me speaking, right? It's spirit speaking through me. It's source speaking through me. So the thing that holds us back from doing that all the time is ego, right? And ego is a survival mechanism. It tells us that if we don't maintain control over this body mind at all times, we're going to die, right? Ultimately, that's what's in there. That's what's in the back of our consciousness. It's in our shadow. We gotta keep control, grasping onto that control, or we're gonna die. You're not gonna die. Your body and mind, someday, this body mind will die. Someday. It's totally fine. Because the important part of me is unborn, and the important part of you is unborn, undying, unalterable, perfect, complete, and whole just as it is. And by the way, don't take my word for anything. If you don't believe that, do what we call take it for checking. Check it out. Examine. Does it make sense for you? Get to your truth. I am speaking from a individualized perspective. So I talked a little bit about what mysticism is. I even gave you some hints about how you might start mystical practice on a daily basis, right? So there are people who do sort of mindfulness meditation where they sit in meditation and like, okay, I'm going to do mindfulness now. And then there are people who do mindfulness like as daily activity, like they mindfully eat, mindfully sip their coffee, mindfully walk around, and bring mindfulness into their day-to-day activities. I think, good morning, my friend. Lovely to see you this morning. Uh, we were Well, I don't want to give personal details about anybody, but we're friends in real life, and so it's lovely to see you this morning. And glad we all made it through the power outages and had a great time uh, observing the eclipse. And we are from Maine, and we're close to the path of totality. So had a kind of a cool experience with the eclipse the other day. Um, Talking about mysticism and bringing it into really bringing it into daily life and kind of living it, right, as opposed to and there's nothing wrong. And I honestly think that like sitting down for set periods of um, meditation, prayer, whatever spiritual practice you have that sustains you, that helps you feel that connection to that which is greater than yourself. Um, uh, I really think that stuff is important. I think it's extremely helpful, but I'm also talking about how to bring mystical practice into your day-to-day experience so that you're living it, so that it's just your natural state of being, which is a beautiful state of being. Um, Good morning to you as well. Good morrow, friend. Lovely to see you. Lovely to see everybody here this morning. I am drinking Market Basket brand coffee this morning, and it's actually it's delicious. I don't know, if you buy store brand stuff, there are really good store brands out there. They're just basically put into it's like name brands, but put into somebody else's bag. Like Market Basket isn't, picking their own coffee beans and roasting their own coffee. So their store brand coffee is actually delicious. So it's what I'm having this morning. I have to drive a little way to go to a Market Basket. Um, so mysticism. Let's get back to mysticism. So I'm going to I want to talk about a model, a cosmological model, and there are many out there. And so mine isn't any better than anybody else's, but it's how I think about the universe. It's how I think about things starting. And it's a model, so it's not the truth, right? A picture of something is not the thing. Um, a picture is a type of model. So I'm sure look around and see if I have any models on my desk here. Oh, yes, I do. So this is a bear, right? But it's not a bear. It's a figurine of a bear. It's pretty cool. Once a brown bear. He's roaring. He's roaring because he's hungry. So he hasn't had his breakfast yet this morning. There were no trout in the stream for him, or salmon. I guess they eat. I don't know, trout, salmon, whatever. Um, but we recognize this as a bear, right? If you see this, you're like, oh, that's a bear. Or hopefully, most people would recognize this as a bear. But it's not a bear. It's a model of a bear. Is it useful? Yeah. If I were teaching something and I'm like, look, okay, this is how to recognize a bear, but it's not a bear. And that's how models work. Models have deletion and distortion. So, a lot of information. This model of a bear, as far as I know, doesn't have internal organs and is not walking around and acting like a bear. So it has some use. Um, so anyway, that's a little bit about models. But so this model, this cosmological model, is useful to me to understand what I'm doing when I'm practicing. Other models are useful for other things, or maybe other models might be useful for you if you're practicing. So um, when I look at the various cosmologies out there, cosmologies are just basically spiritual descriptions of how the universe was created and how things work. That's kind of it, right? Um, so we can look at Kabbalah from Jewish mysticism. We can look at Taoism from China. We can look at Hermeticism, which who knows where that's from. It might be from Egypt. It might be from Atlantis. It might be from you know um, the translations of the Emerald Tablet we have come from Arabic, but we don't. Before that, we have no idea. Um, there are legends about where that came from, but so if we look at all of these multiple models that come from different time periods and different spiritual systems in different areas on the earth, they all describe what I would refer to as emanations. So all of these models describe like a vast nothingness, right? In Hebrew, it's the Ein Sof Or, which is a field of limitless light, the Ein Sof Or. In Taoism, it's I think it's called Wu. uh, don't you can correct me if I'm wrong. I may absolutely be wrong about that. I don't really speak Chinese. um, but it is the emptiness. It is the nothingness. Now the nothingness isn't nothing. It's just before everything, right? Like before the Big Bang, what was there? There was no time. There was no space. There's no model yet for what there was before the Big Bang, right? There's nothingness. So we see this in Kabbalah. We see this um, in the Corpus Hermeticum, the Hermetic texts. We see this. So the nothingness becomes the one thing. In Kabbalah, it becomes the sphere of Kether. Um, in uh, I don't know the word for it. In it might actually be called the Tao in Chinese. In in Hermeticism, it's called the one thing. The one thing. So the nothingness is it's just this field of consciousness. There's no matter, there's no time, there's no space. So everything then is emanated through that, and there are complex descriptions of how that happens. Generally speaking, the nothingness, coagulates into one thing, and the one thing splits into masculine and feminine aspects, right? The yin and the yang, or the bina and chokmah, or the I don't know, just the masculine and feminine principles in hermetic alchemy. So that one thing splits into these things, and from that, in Taoism, they say that 10,000 things are created, and 10,000 is just an metaphor for like an infinite number of things spring forth from that. But there's one mind, one prima materia, one material, one mind, all of these things. It all goes back to a unity, and then before that, a nothingness. But the nothingness is still not nothingness. In Buddhism, they say form is emptiness and emptiness is form, and they're the same thing. Little tough to wrap your brain around. It's why we have models, right? Models help us wrap our brains around these things, the creation of the universe. So, in various forms of mysticism, the idea is to walk back up that ladder through the 10,000 things and reunite with the one thing, right? The not to go too far into biblical mysticism, but uh, going up the tree of life is visual. So there's a lightning path of creation. So it comes down the tree of life like zigzags, like a lightning bolt. But then to climb back up is the path of the snake. Snake in the Garden of Eden and tree of life is metaphor, it's allegory. There's mystical truths behind that. And it's not meant to be, I hate to tell you, it's not meant to be taken literally. It was never meant to be taken literally. Literal historical interpretation of these stories is was for hundreds and hundreds of years considered like the lowest form of interpretation. But there are mystical truths there, right? Hidden in allegory. Again, they're models. There's esoteric, meaning there's the hidden truths that are there for the initiated, and then there's exoteric. That's the stuff that we just tell the people that are coming to church on Sunday, right? So, um, our goal in mysticism is to, one model, walk back up that tree and to reunite our consciousness. We're, transcending. And Hermeticism became alchemy. And so you have these guys in laboratories trying to figure out, trying to separate everything out and figure out what the original matter was. And that matter, they were like trying to like extract the spirit from matter, and that sort of thing. And along the way, they found out they had to elevate their consciousness. They had to change their consciousness or their experiments would fail. Well, that seems weird. And for hundreds and hundreds of years, when there was like a big separation between material science and spirituality, or the science of consciousness. And now, like in the 20th and 21st century, we have quantum science, quantum physics, which tells us that our consciousness very much affects our material world, right? Um, Look up the double slit experiment if you don't know what it is and are very interested in that. And that the way we observe things changes their fundamental properties. How does that happen? happens because consciousness is everything. Oh, cool. Yeah, if you don't mind sharing the name of that book, I would love to hear it. I'm actually doing I'm writing a thesis on spiritual alchemy right now, right at this moment, and I'm gathering research. So if you've got a good one, I would love to know the name of that book. I will add it to my literature review for my thesis. Um, so so um, we want to return to that natural state. We want to return to the Garden of Eden, but for the fall, right? They talk about the language that's used, the fall of man, the fall from the upper spheres. Again, it's not a physical garden. It's the separation of consciousness. It's the my take. I did a whole I did what did I do? A podcast episode? Think I did a podcast episode or something on metaphysical interpretation of original sin, right? Adam and Eve eat the apple from the tree of knowledge or the tree of life, depending on how you want to view it, and they fall out of the graces of God, and they get kicked out of the garden and whatever. My metaphysical interpretation of that is that this is about the development of ego that says I'm this body, I'm this mind, I'm separated from God. What keeps me separated from God or divinity is my ego. Oh, cool. Thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna Real Alchemy by Robert Allen Bartlett. I am going to check that out for sure. Thank you. And I will perhaps add that to my collection, my growing collection of alchemy books that is uh becoming part of my literature review. Um, just taking a note of that. Real Alchemy. Um, yeah. Oh, it's a primer on practical alchemy, which is interesting. Um, yeah, I've never done practical alchemy. I might be practical alchemy is you might call laboratory alchemy. So it's actually like setting up a lab and doing that work. And there are people today that are still doing that. There are people that are still doing alchemical work. By the way, Isaac Newton, guy who discovered the law of gravity and invented calculus and um, is responsible for us understanding the movement of planets and things like that. Isaac Newton uh, was an alchemist. He had an alchemical lab. He had his own translation of the Emerald Tablet, and he was doing experiments in um, So anyway, so were many people back in. John Dee was an alchemist. So there were a lot of back in the day, really smart people practiced alchemy. Um, and Newton, by the way, thought that because the universe followed natural laws, that was proof. Like there's nothing that he could observe that violated any natural law, right? You drop something and it falls down. Doesn't matter what it is. You drop a feather, you drop a brick, you drop yourself off the side of a building, you drop a bowling ball on your toe, it falls down. Gravity, it's a thing, it's a law. It's a law because it always exists, right? And people say, oh, such and such defies the laws of physics, like planes flying defy the laws of physics, or bees flying defy the laws of physics. They don't. They don't defy any law of physics. They may defy our current. I mean, we know how planes work, but and now we understand how bees fly as well. But they just defy our current understanding. But everything follows natural laws in the universe. And so he viewed that as proof of a deity, right? Because some intelligence, some mind had to be in control of all of these things. So there are lots of natural forces, and this might not be news to anybody. I don't know. There are all kinds of natural forces in the universe, right? That are described by physics, right? There's strong atomic force and the weak atomic force and electromagnetism and gravity and any of those things. If any of those forces were even slightly off by the barest, slightest amount, the physical universe that we know wouldn't exist. Everything would fly apart. We would not have the elements we have. Um, it would just be this field of energy, I guess, and there would be no time and space. So the very existence of the universe that we live in, some people take as evidence of divinity, of God, of a source consciousness. What is it that holds these laws in place? From a Kabbalistic perspective, that would be angels, right? There are angels that are responsible for gravity, the laws of gravity. So from that perspective, God has it's sort of like it's a very business oriented perspective. It's a very business like model. Like you have the CEO, who's God. God has an idea. Let's create a physical universe. Go put that into place. And then you have this layer of sort of archangels at one tier of existence. And they're like, okay, what do we need for this physical universe to happen? Okay, we need gravity, electromagnetism, strong and weak atomic forces, all of this stuff. We need all of this stuff to happen. Okay. Um, how are we going to put that into place? Okay, so you angels over here, so it's like supervisors, right? It's like a CEO at top and all of these supervisors. And there are layers and levels and hosts of angels that are responsible um, for putting all of these things into place, right? Where God's sort of the big picture, big thinker, kind of that's one model of things. So um, there is a single source of everything there is. This is the idea, right? And even if you are atheistic and just think like the Big Bang happened out of nowhere and the entire universe was created out of this explosion 15 billion years ago, um, there's still a single source. There was one thing, we don't quite know what it was, one singularity. The whole universe was infinitesimally small. And so everything that there is, all of this physical matter in our consciousness and everything came out of this one source, this one reaction. And this is a place where I think science and spirituality are talking about the same thing, but using different terminology. I think the creation of the universe, whether you think it was kicked off by an intelligence or a consciousness. And by the way, if you're familiar with Schrodinger's cat, Erwin Schrödinger was a physicist, a quantum physicist, and he said famously that the amount of consciousnesses in the universe is one. And this has been repeated by many scientists. This is somebody who's plumbing the depths of the universe. So the model is that there is a single consciousness, God, the universe, source, the Tao, whatever you want to call it. And that we are not apart from that. We are just individualized aspects of that, right? A spirit. I love Jason Miller is an author that I like a whole lot, and I own all of his books. Um, and he wrote a book recently, I think it came out last year or so, the last 2 years anyway, called Consorting with Spirits. And his definition of a spirit is organized consciousness. That's it. So I like to think about consciousness being this field, this pervasive field um, that is all of the universe, that's behind all of the universe, but all of the universes, all of the planes, all the layer, there is just consciousness, and every experience just arises in this field of consciousness. Sometimes consciousness coagulates and experiences individual things, and I think this is by design. This is a mystical idea. It's not my idea, but so if you go back to the beginning, there's a field of infinite light, um, and with no universe behind it. It's just consciousness, no time, no space. Oh, hi, Phoebe. My cat is just wants to say hello. I don't know. I don't think she'll jump up on the desk, but she just likes to come by and say hi. Um, so the entire universe is suffused with this consciousness, and you practice shamanism, you get to explore different universes, and that's lots of fun. Um, and consciousness sort of coagulates and gets organized around different things. So we have consciousness as humans that is very often organized around our body and mind, right? We identify really strongly with this body. That's ego, right? I am this body. Starting to move away from that and saying, I am not this body. In fact, I'm not even doing this. I'm just observing. I'm the observer. This body is doing what it's going to do. And thoughts arise in my head. I don't choose what I think. I mean, I can, feel like I have some influence over what I'm thinking, but thoughts arise in my head that I don't have any control over. Feelings arise for me that I don't have any control over. I watched a video yesterday that made me tear up. It was the actor Michael Sheen, who was in Good Omens recently. And he was sitting, I think, in a school or something and answering questions. And there was a boy who was, who was autist, somewhere on the autism spectrum, autism, who was having trouble, asking his question. And just very softly and very calmly, he just said, "Take your time. We have all the time in the world. We've got plenty of time. Whenever you're ready, it's okay," whatever. And he just got really quiet and really soft. It didn't, knew he must know or have been informed about working with people who are autistic. Didn't, do this, eye contact can be very uncomfortable sometimes. Um, and eventually this boy got his voice and asked a really brilliant question. He's like, what a great question, and went to answer the question. And just like the kindness of that, just sort of like like I'm tearing up a little bit now talking about it. Just like the kindness of that overwhelmed me a little bit. I didn't choose that. Where did that come from? Right? It arose in my consciousness. And we can talk about the structures and consciousness and the unconscious and how, I've got a shadow and you've got a shadow and all of these things. But it's really it was just really a lovely thing to experience. Yeah, so yeah, lots of insects kind of act with a hive consciousness. Ants are definitely a cool one to study, and they can actually apply a lot of ant studies to human behavior as well, like following the same tracks. Go to like a busy train station and watch how people like get off the train and don't even like pay attention to where they're going. Hi, Juno. My dog wants to be let out because she always does when you're going to wait just a little bit, okay? Because you just went out. It's fine. You need a little pat. So, unified theory, thought of a lawn. Consciousness is the entire lawn. We're the individual blades of grass. Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. Um, Zen and the art of lawnmower. I am the watcher. I am the witness. Yeah. So we're the observers. So one way to explain this is imagine that you're God, and you are, but imagine that you are this undifferentiated field of consciousness, and you want to learn about yourself. You want to explore for whatever reason. You're just curious. You're just, you decide one day, I mean, there aren't any days in this, but you're sitting around as nothingness in this field of nothingness, just pure consciousness. Maybe you're bored. I don't know. And you say, I want to experience myself. How do I do that? If I'm limitless, light. Well, if you were to shine a flashlight into the vacuum of space, you wouldn't see it. You wouldn't see the beam unless it bounced off something. When we see a beam from a flashlight, it's bouncing off of something, right? So we have to create obstacles and divisions. As God, you created obstacles and divisions so that you could experience things. You could have experiences. That is your purpose. People talk about the meaning of life. It's really simple. It's to experience, and that's it. Everything you're experiencing. And we try to make sense out of things from a really human perspective, and that's natural, right? If God exists, why do bad things happen? Why do I observe bad things happening? Why do I suffer? Um and bad is just a label. I'm not saying you don't have experiences that have hurt or been painful or whatever. But we all go through painful experiences, and we all go through grief, and we all go through they're all just experiences. And it may sound callous, but if you take a neutral observer perspective on it, and I'm not saying we shouldn't alleviate suffering. That's not at all what I'm saying. I think we absolutely should alleviate suffering when we can. But the real path out of suffering, and this is what the Buddha taught, right? The Four Noble Truths, that there's suffering, there's a reason behind the suffering. And ultimately, there is a way out of suffering, and that is to let go of attachment, also to let go of aversion. Aversion is an attachment to pushing things away, but let go of our attachment to things, including this body and mind. This body is getting older, right? I got white hair in my beard, not gray, white hair in my beard. I don't heal as quickly as I used to. I can't build muscle as quickly as I used to. I have aches and pains from shoveling snow or things that used to be fine for me. This body is going to grow old and die. That's just truth. I've accepted that. And this mind will, to many extents, cease to be. My consciousness will continue because consciousness is not created. It's a little tough to describe. Your consciousness, your spirit, your indwelling, immortal, divine part of you was never born, so it can't die. It wasn't created. It coagulated into an individualized consciousness, but that divine part of you is beyond time and space, right? So mysticism is about connecting to that. And I gave a little talk recently about how to make your prayer or your meditation more mystical, more metaphysical. And one of the things I suggest for your practice is, very often we're taught to pray out there. God's out there somewhere. God is transcendent, but not immanent. God is up in the sky, up in the clouds with a beard. By the way, that is Zeus or Jupiter. That whole model of God living in the sky god casting down lightning bolts, that is Jupiter, 100%. That is the god Jupiter from Rome, that we modeled a lot of Renaissance art about. Right. So God's up there in the sky somewhere. But yet, most spiritual systems that believe in a deity believe that the source of all things, God, or whether you believe in multiple gods and goddesses, there's still a source of things, even them, as individualized, vast consciousnesses. They are omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent, meaning God is everywhere and everything and behind everything and is aware of everything. That means there is nothing that God is not. There's no other way for omnipresence or omniscience or omnipotence to be. Right? At a very basic level, There is nothing that is not God, and that includes things we don't like. That includes people we don't like, acting in ways that we think are ungodly, right? Um, One thing I know, so if you want to understand divinity, if you want to understand God, you can look at what I call observable qualities of source, OQS. Observable qualities of source. Look around the universe, even the small patch of the universe that this individualized consciousness, I'm going to call me, exists in, is incredibly diverse. I can look out my window and see 15 species of trees and who knows how many other species of plants out there, and millions of species of bugs and beetles and birds and animals and human beings. Every human being is unique. I have identical twin daughters. They couldn't be more different. They look a lot alike. The personalities are different. I can look at them and tell the difference. Their voices are different. The things they like are different. They have some commonalities because they're both 17-year-old girls who go to the same school, hang out with a lot of the same people. So they're both listening to Taylor Swift, but they like different things. They have different goals. They have different, different individuals. So diversity is an observable quality of source. Diversity, having things be different. And going back to the model of, okay, if I'm God and I want to observe myself, I have to create this universe that's full of stuff for me to observe. I don't want to create everything to be the same because then I'm not really exploring my boundaries. I'm not really exploring what's possible. I'm not really exploring. Um, I am also a big Taylor Swift fan, so I'm not ashamed to. I'm a 52-year-old man. I'm not ashamed to admit that I'm a big Taylor Swift fan. Um, I love Taylor Swift. I think her music's great. I like her. I like her vibe and her energy, and I like that she's a powerful woman, and lots of things to appreciate about Taylor Swift. Even if her music is not your cup of tea, you can just appreciate her. And I appreciate the fact that she is convincing young women to register to vote and to vote their conscience. I think those are important, great things. My daughters are actually upset that they turn 18. Um, their 18th birthday is like a week and a half after the next presidential election, so they don't get to vote in the next presidential election. Like, I don't get to vote. I'm only a few days away. I'm like, that's just how it works. I'm sorry. Sorry. You get to vote in the one after that. But yeah, love Taylor Swift. So do my daughters. Um, which is how I'm exposed to them. I listen to all kinds of different music. And Taylor Swift's on my list as well. My daughters will listen to her in the car, or used to a lot in the car on my Spotify account. So it would come up, "Hey, you like Taylor Swift, you'll also like this." Um, but yeah. One of my daughters, and I love this, one of my daughters loves Fleetwood Mac a whole lot. And I'm like, "You love Fleetwood Mac? That's like music from when I was young. That's awesome." So we listen to a lot of Fleetwood Mac, and she has an actual record player, so she plays vinyl, and I love that about her. And she I think I got her Fleetwood Mac. She has Fleetwood Mac albums, but I think I got her one for Christmas the year that she got the record player. So she got the record player for Christmas, and then she got a bunch of albums, and she will buy vinyl from time to time, which I think is really cool. I miss. I like, I listen to a lot of stuff on Spotify because I have access to all the music in the world or whatever. But I like albums because the art is so cool. And I remember having the when I was young, I was my brother and I and our two friends were big fans of Kiss, the rock group, and we had all the albums that had the posters that you took out and you put them when you got all four of them, you put it together. put them on the wall. I made one big poster. How cool is that? Um, so I love that stuff. Anyway, I digress a whole lot. That's my ADHD kicking in. Uh, so I do want to talk a little bit about what mystical practices have for us in this modern day. Like why would we care? Like we're not living in 2000 years ago in a desert or whatever, and we're busy. We have busy lives, and we have uh families to worry about, and snowstorms that knock out our power for 4 days, and all kinds of things. What does mysticism have to offer us? Well, for one thing, maybe, I'm not saying it's for everybody, but maybe it offers some practices that can help us understand our place here, understand who we really are. And that's something that I care about. Maybe you don't, and that's fine. Um, Mystical practices can help us live a better life. In other words, we can understand how the things manifest in our lives. We can live an easier life when we allow spirit to work through us in a way that is very comfortable and easy, and we're not struggling against the world a lot of times. So, in a very practical, down to earth level, mysticism itself can really help with that, living in the presence of God. One of the things that I will one of the things that I will talk about, I was sort of questioning whether I would discuss this on here, but it's not like a huge secret or whatever. But I am recently single again, right? So still great friends with my former partner, but find myself being single again. Um, and mystical practices make me feel less lonely. That doesn't mean I don't want to find a partner again someday when the time is right. When the person, well, not when the time is right, but when the person is right. I've got lots of love to share, but like loneliness is like an epidemic in this world, and it doesn't matter if you're with a bunch of people or you're by yourself a lot of the time or whatever. Loneliness can hit you, and it does a number on us. And being connected to that which is greater than ourselves can really enrich our lives in a way where that is much less of a factor. I think it actually, in meditation by itself, has shown amazing results in research, health results, mental health results, um, all of that kind of stuff. So having spiritual practices, feeling connected to spirit, has helped me through very difficult times in my life, um, as well as being good for my mental health and being good for my physical health, and helping me show up in the world in a way where I really just want to help people and be connected to people, and um, you know be the kind of presence that lifts people up. And I do think so, on an individual level, there are very practical reasons for mystical work, besides the fact that it makes you feel really good. That alone should be enough, right? It makes you feel really good without taking chemicals, without uh, you know, uh, any of the drawbacks of other things that might make you feel really good. Um, and I'm not saying, I'm not judging anybody's lifestyle. I'm just saying this practice can make you feel really good. It's a very practical level. On a global level, I think the more that we actually show up in the world, the more healing work that we do with ourselves, and the better we show up in the world, the better we make the world, right? Um, one of the things that has kept me going in spiritual practice for so many years is that I had children and I wanted to show up um, as a better dad than I had. I wanted to show up as a better, you know, am I a perfect parent? Absolutely not. I don't know that that exists. Have I made mistakes? Absolutely. Absolutely. But I can also forgive myself. And I maintain a really strong relationship with my kids. And that is so important to me, as they, oh my gosh, go off to college next year. Wow. um, blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind. But um, so there are many reasons why mystical practice still have place in today's world. It can help us get rid of stress, can help us feel less lonely. It can help, it helps us show up in the world in a better place. It can help us really understand that we are a divine emanation, that we are emanating from divine source. If that's your thing. I am not prescribing anything for anyone. I'm just talking about my experience with it. If it's not your thing, it's not your thing. That's fine. The majority of the world at this point in time is, I would say, vast majority, um, what we would say non-mystical. And that includes people who go to church regularly or go to temple or whatever, kind of walking through the paces. And most churches, temples, religious structures are non-mystical in their orientation. There are exceptions. Um, many new thought churches, like unity churches, for example, teach mysticism and meditation. Spiritualist churches, um, you know, some, not all Buddhist temples. Um, you could join a Sufi order. In Islam, Sufism is a mystical order within Islam, right? If you've ever read poetry by Rumi, Rumi was a Sufi mystic. And interestingly, so Sufis, if you've ever heard of or seen what they call, I don't know if this is a correct term or not. So pardon me if I'm using a bad term. I don't mean it that way. I just mean it like to explain. If you've heard the term whirling dervish, right? So the whirling dervishes are these, they're Sufis and they dance, they spin around, they wear these sort of skirt things and they spin and it's absolutely beautiful. And really, really great. I read an interview with a Sufi dancer and the way that he described it when he dancing can be a form of mysticism, is that he felt like he was being lifted up by angels. What a beautiful description. What a beautiful, absolutely beautiful thing. Hi, puppy. My puppy's over here whining at me. She's like, "You're not paying attention to me." Hey, hey, how you doing? You want to say hi? I don't know if I can lift you up. Oh, let's say hi. This is Juno. This is Juno. Say hi, Juno. Hello. Good morning. Don't lick my neck right now. Yuck. Um, this is Juno. She's full of love. Um, she's only about a year. She's just over a year old. Oh, okay. You want to hop down? Okay. Go play with the cat. Go play with your sister, the cat. Um, the animals don't like it when I'm, like, away. They're like, "You're not paying attention to me," and I know it because I can hear you talking to somebody. I don't know who you're talking to. Um, okay, so Sufis. They're dancing Sufi orders and non-dancing Sufi orders. So this Sufi dancer described his dances like he would enter into an altered state. That's an important aspect of mystical practice, is altering from an everyday state of consciousness. Can do that through many ways, not just imbibing chemicals, although that can be, in schools of shamanism, there is plant medicine. And Juno, Juno. Um, Sorry, the puppy's chewing on something she shouldn't. I may have to get up in a moment. I may have to end this. I do have to end in a moment, but he described it as being lifted by angels, and what a beautiful description that is. So there's many, many ways to alter consciousness: meditation, prayer, dance, music alters consciousness. Um, Many, many ways. Sex alters consciousness. There are mystical sexual practices. Believe it or not, if you don't believe it, you can read the Kama Sutra, or there are even early Christian, very early Christian sexual practices, from particularly from the Gnostics. Um, so lots of ways to alter consciousness, to dissolve the ego a little bit, to get rid of our attachment to this ego a little bit and get into a state of union with the divine. So anyway, Rumi, the poet, the Sufi poet, somebody I know who lived in a Sufi order for a while, told me that Rumi was actually a dancer, and he would dance, he would do the spinning, and get inspired, and then just recite his poetry, and somebody else was writing it down. I don't 100% know if that's true, but this is what somebody who knows more than I do told me. So I will someday read something about it. Yes, 100%. When I do deep meditation or prayer, my dogs try to interrupt me. Do you think there are changes with your astral body that animals can detect? Yes, and not just your astral body, but your etheric body as well. When I work with clients or I teach, my animals are all over me. Particularly my cat will climb all over me if I'm teaching, or if I'm working with a client. So, um, oh my gosh, this thing. Um, Coffee's getting a little cold. I'm gonna have to warm it up, and it's almost time for a second cup. It's almost time for me to run. As it's 9 o'clock, I have to. I'm beginning my day with you all, and which is really lovely, and really, really, really lovely to see some familiar faces. And thank you for coming back and interacting. And I love it so much. I've learned. Thank you again for the book uh, title. And like I said, I'm in the research phase of a master's thesis. This will be my third master's degree. I don't know. There's something wrong with me. I've got a problem. Um, One of these days, maybe I'll get a PhD, but I'm not rushing into that at the moment. So this will be my third master's, but this will be I've a master's degree in information security, and I have an MBA, and now I'm getting a master's in degree in metaphysics. So I don't know why. I don't know. I'm constantly learning. I'm a very curious person. Oh, thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. I appreciate it, and thank you for joining. Thank you everybody for joining. Makes my day to see the bright shiny faces, or other images that you have going on there. Oh, you're very welcome. Very welcome. I appreciate you as well. Oh gosh, thank you. Don't congratulate me yet. This is off in the future. This is off in the distance, but thank you. No, I appreciate it. I've got lots of research and writing to do, so I'm in that process. But I'm super nerdy, and I'm a little bit of a homebody. So that's it's good for me to keep my mind busy and keep my mind learning. Um, with that, I'm going to say goodbye for now. Don't forget, if you haven't, don't forget to, however you're viewing this, subscribe if you are interested in being informed when these happen again. They are the recordings of these are available, like they're uploaded to YouTube, and YouTube records them, and Facebook records them. So the recordings are available, but if you want to participate live, you can come on through Facebook or YouTube and chat, and that sort of thing. You are so welcome. Lovely to have you join this morning. Um, Everybody, I want you to have an amazing day. It's Wednesday, it's hump day. We're halfway through the week, halfway into the next week. I don't know, however you want to view it, glass half full, folks. And we'll talk.